All right, so right now it is the evening of November 15th, 2019, of course. So we're solidly into 2 weeks of No Nut November. Now I'm about 4 days late on this. This should be the week 1 update, but better late than never. That does indeed mean that I will be recording another update 2 days from now. So I decided for this first one I should just focus on my routine and my feelings and thoughts leading up to November 1st. And then in 2 days, we can actually talk about how I'm holding up with the challenge. I did decide that last year, No Nut November was something that I'd want to attempt. I just wasn't prepared last year to do it. By the time the idea got in my head, it had already started, or it was about to start, that year's run, and I just was in that point in my life where I wanted to attempt that. So for the coming months, I decided to start a little bit of a routine. It wasn't initially in preparation for this year's No Nut November. It's actually because I, let's just say, injured myself. So I needed to take a break from that. So I took at least a week off, and that was actually the first time in my life that I had actually ever taken a break longer than a couple of days when it comes to that sort of thing. So I decided to, it was actually sort of like a pivotal moment. It was, and kind of invigorating. So I decided to, not have that be the end of it. I decided to keep going. So, obviously when a week was over, I actually did last a couple more days after that, but I decided, well, I don't really have any goals I'm shooting for, so let's just go ahead and break that streak. And then after a week of that, I decided, you know what? Why not try 2 weeks and see how that, holds up and all that. And I just kind of went from there, and then that kind of started this routine that I have since dubbed intermittent fapping. Kind of a play on words from intermittent fasting there. Kind of obvious, but so yeah, I would just take a week off, a week back on. I'd be rewarded with a week back on. Take 2 weeks off, be rewarded with 2 weeks on. Take 3 weeks off, be rewarded with 3 weeks on, and so on. When I did get to the 4 week stretch, that is, I actually did fail there. And that did teach me a lot, and why I failed and how to not fail again. I do specifically remember the day I failed was the day that we found out about Edeka's passing. So that is, unfortunately, is an event that will forever be burned within my head, just because of how things lined up. So after I had failed, I decided to do a little bit of an altered version of the intermittent fapping schedule that I had already started. So to basically, it was kind of like a detox at that point. I would start basically back over because the idea was, I didn't have enough time to completely start over before November 1st. So I had a little bit of an altered schedule where I would just go backwards. So since I attempted 4 weeks and failed, I would just, since I had already broken the streak, I would just continue for the next 2 weeks. So I would have 3 weeks on, and then I would have 2 weeks off, and then 2 weeks on, and then a week off, then a week on. Then I would just work my way back up from there. The goal wasn't to get to the way that the schedule was supposed to work was that by the time I had got to I would get to 3 weeks on, it would be I think there's a couple of extra days which I did not mind, but it would be right around November 1st. So the 4 weeks off would just so happen to coincide with the month of November, even though this year's November ends up having 5 weeks, but, that's neither here nor there. Yeah, I didn't quite schedule it correctly, and because of that, since I didn't feel like altering the schedule any further, but at a certain point, I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna just go on until No Nut November, and we're just gonna do a cold turkey and see what happens. So yeah, on November 1st, apparently it's a big deal where, exactly at 12 a.m. you're done. I have never really thought of it that way, especially in my own intermittent fapping routines. I would, as long as, that night beforehand, since just by nature of the act, it's probably going to overlap, into the next day, just because it's late at night, especially how I work. Things just tend to happen that way late at night. So, it was never really a big deal for me. I basically stayed up till well in the morning, finishing up my last bits before November 1st. Some people are apparently really strict about that. I'm not. I think that's perfectly fine, but again, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I did learn a lot in doing those routines. In all frankness, the actual reason why I decided to do a little bit of an altered version after I had failed the 4-week run, is because it's quite obvious once you start taking long periods of time away from it, there are changes that you recognize. Some could say for the good or for the worse. It does make you look at women a lot differently. Women that you previously would have not thought nothing about, all of a sudden start occupying your mind a lot more, and there is a lot of thoughts there, lots that I'm not quite proud to admit, so I won't, but let's just say that things got pretty degenerate there for a while, just by nature of who I am and my aspirations in life. I don't really go out seeking those type of relationships, at least not in this point in my life. So, being in that state of mind, it did encourage me to do just that. And I got pretty close to, to doing that. Yeah, no, but yeah, no, I all but said it out loud to myself, at the time, but I was like, oh man, I can't have to go back to just doing 3 weeks, like, just let me have a little bit more on time, like, I don't want to turn back into that person. I remember that specific thought went through my head, I don't want to go back to being that person. So yeah, no, it was a, really pivotal moment there for me as far as all of this is concerned. But no, I do think the exercises, have helped in the sense that, once you've gone through, just by nature of how it works, like once you've done a week is nothing. Once you do 2 weeks, 2 weeks is nothing. 3 weeks isn't all too bad. And so on. Since I have been going cold turkey on that, as far as the No Nut November challenge is concerned, it has been a little bit tougher for the first couple of weeks, and I'll go into more details about that a couple of days from now when I do the 2-week update, since this is just supposed to be the first week. But the first week, as I alluded to, was slightly more difficult than it had previously been, just because I hadn't been used to it. But it overall wasn't anything I couldn't handle or was anything, too tasking. I've been rambling enough. So I will go ahead and cut this off here and resume in 2 days, if I can remember to do it. So I will see y'all then. Alright, this will be the 2-week No Nut November Challenge update. I'm filming this at November 16th, 2 a.m. in the morning, so I didn't quite get it. the exact time, but should be the same information nonetheless. So yeah, the second week, most of it has been pretty standard, pretty fine, no problems. But the last couple of days here, I must admit, I have relapsed a bit. Now let me explain myself. It's not that I've completely relapsed. It's just that one specific night, I believe it was 2 nights ago. Let me set up some context a little bit. In the afternoon, I was kind of just browsing. I ended up on Imgur. It's not usually something I browse, but whenever you have a link on Imgur, there's that little sidebar that shows you all the stuff that's trending. And I saw an interesting video that I just, wanted to take a look at. Just a quick 10-20 second video. And it turned out to be a video from an Instagram model. I wish I knew the exact one. Let me see if I can find it. Demi Bagby was the name. I did make a specific effort not to browse through the timelines or anything like that. I did give the account a follow, but that's neither here nor there. And that does go into what I wanted to address. I saw this tweet that went pretty viral. I believe I liked it on my account, but so I could go back and reference it. It actually had some pretty decent tips for people attempting No Nut November. One of the tips, I believe maybe even the first one, was to try and stay off of social media, actually, because you never know what you can find. It's to not provoke. And even though this was just, very light browsing, that is a tip that I did not take completely to heart. Even at that little sidebar that Imgur has, I still managed to find something that did indeed provoke. Not then and there immediately, but, later at night when I went to retire, I couldn't sleep. And, I'll just be honest. I mean, when I'm going to sleep, I see that as a time where I can kind of maybe cheat a little bit. I can escape. Because No Nut November challenge is not the same as NoFap, where, any type of pornography or anything like that is just discouraged. It is specifically just not nutting, So I don't see it as cheating or, being duplicitous in any ways. If I'm in my own mind, you know what I mean? Like, this ain't no 1984 out here. You can't get me for thought crime on the world, you know what I mean? So I go to sleep and, certain things may preoccupy my thoughts. And those thoughts may slip into my dreams. And if I do it just right, those dreams may be lucid enough to where it can be an enjoyable experience. Something to rival that of, the usual routine. So I'm trying to get to sleep and I'm having a little of trouble, more than usual, actually, falling asleep. In these ideas are, flowing around in my head. This Demi Bagby person usually, under no other circumstances, would be somebody that I would pursue more than, just kind of seeing the odd viral. She does tend to have a lot of those from what I can see. I've never heard of her up until now. But, in November, you'll take what you can get, It's less about, I relapsed, I won. No, it's just like I was having trouble sleeping, and I was curious. It was more out of curiosity about just certain things, like what would come up if I Googled this, If I looked this up, what images could I find? Just to sate my curiosity, so I go looking and, this would have been around, I tried to retire early. That at least earlier than usual that night, and before you knew it, it was 7 a.m. I was still there browsing, you know what I mean? So yeah, that was pretty bad. I believe that was 2 nights ago.
last night was not nearly as bad. It was still a little bit of the same. I was no longer browsing anything, but let's just say I stayed in bed a little longer than I should have. That's kind of been the case for the past couple of days. That's kind of just the theme for this week, was staying in bed a little longer than normal. That was another tip on that tweet that I had previously mentioned, was, don't stay in bed, immediately go into the shower. It'll give you energy. The thing is, like, that's not usually my routine. If I'm going to take a shower, it's usually like in the midday before I'm going somewhere. Not usually just like when I get up, especially if I'm not going anywhere, like I don't have to go to school or anything. This particular semester, just by the way that my school works, I have all my classes are online, so I don't even need to get up to go anywhere. So yeah, that's just usually not a part of my routine, but I'm low key considering maybe starting to make it that, because, I did take a shower later on the day and I realized that just kind of, all right, I'm awake now. All right, let's get some stuff done. You know what I mean? So maybe that low key is the way to go, instead of laying in bed, trapped in your thoughts. You're not quite asleep, but not quite awake neither. Just, force yourself to get up, run in the shower, get that energy, and, continue on with your day, being productive, hopefully. That's another thing. I've been very, very unproductive, as if though, just this week in general. And that's something that I keep saying I'm trying to fix, but never actually gets fixed. And this challenge is not helping that, I'll be honest. So for that reason, the only reason I'm recording this now, I actually wanted to get a lot of schoolwork that I've been procrastinating on done, but the internet, just spontaneously decided to go out, so I can't actually sit here and do a lot of the procrastinating that I wanted to do. So I decided I might as well go ahead and record this, and then maybe just go to procrastinate even more and just go ahead and retire for the night, or the morning rather. And but I was actually thinking about maybe setting an alarm. It's around 2 a.m. now. I'll probably get to sleep around 3. I could set an alarm for 8, 9, 10, as long as it's before noon. And, start getting some work done, start being productive, something I'm really considering. I might try it, see how it works for the night. But yeah, that's the general theme of this week, just, being weary of the bed, staying in bed longer than is necessary, I will say, back when I was doing my intermittent fapping routines, this phenomenon that I'm now discussing was prevalent, much more so than is now. So I guess I can at least say it's not as bad as it was back during those exercises. It would be the whole day. I'd be in bed, just scrolling. Eventually that turned into this huge edging epidemic, which I have been considering maybe starting to get into some things that could provoke or inspire said edging. But, we can talk about that another time. I've been rambling long enough. I guess I can cut it off here. Okay, so this is going to be the 3-week update. At the time of recording, it is 11/22/19, around 2:30 in the afternoon. As I mentioned before, around this time in some of my previous exercises is when a little bit of an edging epidemic starts to occur. It usually starts innocent enough. You usually don't even go looking for anything. You might stumble upon something, then you might just go and do a little bit of research on that, and then, you just kind of go down the rabbit hole. And just how my process works, when I'm at it, when I'm working, it involves a lot of archival. It involves a lot of setup. That archival process doesn't necessarily require, it doesn't actually require any, physicality. So
for me, a lot of times I go down this labyrinth. I go down this hole of, setting up, for when the physicality is required. In a week or 2 weeks or whenever it might be in those previous exercises. Saving it for later. I guess is the short version of it. It just starts out innocent like that, but it quickly degenerates into degeneracy, to put it quite frankly. I don't know what it is, but when you're doing that, when you're focusing strictly on archival and there's no physicality, whatever, whatsoever involved, like you just divulge into a lot more extreme content. You'll just catch yourself watching some absurd stuff and you don't know how you got there. I'm not somebody who's particularly into anything all too extreme or radical. Nothing too degenerate like that. But when you have both hands at your disposal and you're operating through these things, you're a lot more efficient and you just get through a lot of stuff a lot quicker. And I guess, you just end up, before you know it, you're watching some type of obscure hentai OVA that involves like cock and ball torture. You know what I mean? During some of these exercises earlier in this year, those were some of the lowest points in my life. It sounds kind of pathetic saying that, but it's just the thoughts that would go through your head constantly. It got so bad that I would start just scrolling through that type of content at school, at work, wherever I was, where I could get a moment of alone time. Or just go into my car. You know what I mean? I could seclude myself for any amount of time. I would just go and consume that content. No physicality involved, but consuming it nonetheless. My justification at the time was, I'm just desensitizing myself to it. Even when I was at the house, I would be watching it, but I'd have like a podcast on in the background or something like that, you know what I mean? So I'm not completely into it, I'm desensitizing myself to this so I can maybe last longer or something. I don't know. You find all sorts of ways to justify it to yourself. And it'll get so bad. I remember a specific instance, because even when you're not being physical in that sense, that doesn't mean that there's nothing physical involved. There is a lot of substance. There's a lot of liquid. I'll put it that way, involved, even if you're not necessarily, nutting. That is going to require some form of a cleanup. You know what I mean? And I remember one day it got so bad that, I would just kind of have some cloth, like a paper towel or something, wrapped around my member, just so I wouldn't have to deal with all that. Even though, again, there's no actual being physical with it. But, just to absorb all of that substance that, exudes when you're consuming this type of content at a regular basis. I remember I had to go out and run an errand. And I remember, I just threw on some, baggy pants, something that I could find, just like a jacket or something. Cause it was just like a quick, I was just gonna go and come back, drop something off and come back. Wouldn't take more than 10 minutes or so. So I remember right when I was about to leave the house, the door was open, I was about to walk out the door, that piece of cloth, that paper towel, comes out the bottom of my sweatpants. I had forgotten to dispose of that. It was still, around my member. And I would have walked out of the house with that, and I could have been anywhere. I could have been, indoors around other people, and that could have came out, and and there would be a lot of explaining to do. So at that point, I realized, okay, this has become a problem. Something needs to be done about this. And that's why I was so cautious and a little bit embarrassed, actually. I mentioned in the previous recap that, I have since started a little bit of that epidemic once again, and I won't lie. Especially the days, like the 2 or 3 days after that update that I did. It started to get there. It started getting pretty bad. Like I said, it just started innocent enough, just curiosity, couldn't sleep, look up some stuff. Before you know it, 5 hours has passed, and it just started seeping into my days, where I would just start looking through, trying to archive all this stuff again. That would go late into the nights, and obviously, and it will get in. It's funny because I would do that because I couldn't sleep, to maybe help me sleep, and it actually made it worse because that would be all that was on my mind when I'm trying to sleep, and then I would end up getting very little sleep. It did clear up eventually. I think that it really, idle hands really is the devil, for lack of a better word, because that's all it really comes down to. If you have other stuff you could be doing or better things you could be doing, obviously those thoughts aren't running through your head. Obviously, there's no opportunity to do that. So my schedule was just kind of busy for the next couple of days, and I would even though I would plan, okay, I'll try and get some work done, then I'm gonna go, and browse some of this stuff and all that type of thing. I'll try and schedule it out at the very least, but I just couldn't fit it in. I wouldn't have the time to do it because I had all this other stuff that I was trying to get done. And before you know it, okay, I skip one day, because I was just kind of busy, then another day because I was trying to get to sleep earlier, and then another day, and blah blah blah. Then before you know it, like 3-4 days has passed, and I haven't even opened up any of those browsers or anything, even though I've been meaning to, just because I hadn't had the chance. And then before you know it, you don't even have the urge to do that anymore. And then before you know it, there's only a week left. Next week is the last week. It's like, where did the time go? It doesn't feel like it's already been a month. All of this over 1 month? I'm not going to count my chickens before they hatch, but it wasn't all that difficult, really. Some of these difficulties I'm describing is as bad as it's gotten. I will say the alarms they've been helping a little bit. I did say I would try and start setting alarms. Even though I don't have to wake up this semester specifically to go to class. And they've sort of helped. They've at least woken me up at a more reasonable time in the morning. Even if I don't specifically get up and get anything done, I am up, and it has helped not to wake up in the mid-afternoon or whatever else. Something that I would like to pursue a little bit more. I still have been quite ineffective this whole month. I'm not proud of a lot of the work that I've gotten done because it's very little. I would like to be a little bit more productive in these last week and some odd days here. So I will be trying to focus on that in the coming days. What time we got here? Oh, God. Yeah, that's enough. Yeah, that should be. That should be enough. Yeah. So I will see you guys hopefully in the final recap update next week for the 5th week, ironically enough. Just so happens that this year there are 5 weeks in November. And hopefully I got good news for y'all then. Alright, that's it.
Alright. The time is nearly 11 p.m. It is Friday, October 29th. I guess this is officially, the 4th week. In short, to recap the week, things have been unproductive. I'll put it that way. I've kind of been dreading recording this all day, just so I wouldn't have to admit to anyone who might be listening, and, by proxy myself, just how unproductive I've been being due to this challenge in this final week. But that, doesn't make it any less true. For the most part, the week has, been standard. I have been setting those alarms to wake up early in the morning. I'm not gonna lie, it hasn't really helped all that much because I'll kind of just turn off the alarm and go back to sleep. But it helps to an extent. I have been getting more work done than in previous weeks, so there's that. Still not where I'd like to be, but we've been being somewhat productive throughout the week. It's really just these past couple of days, and especially all of today specifically, that have been particularly unproductive. In short, I have relapsed. No, I have not failed the challenge, but I might as well have. I don't want to go into specifics about how much time I've spent, not necessarily edging, but just, browsing. But it's enough. Let's just say it's long enough that I have gotten absolutely nothing done today because of it. It's interesting, how long you can go for without eating, drinking, or doing whatever, just sitting there, just browsing. It's fascinating. And pathetic, mostly. At least, I'd say so. I won't even get into specifics about how exactly it started. I've somewhat mentioned aspects of that in the past because it's kind of irrelevant. All that, we're in the home stretch here, and I'm low-key testing fate, trying to fail this challenge in the last legitimately 2 days here. Idle hands, man, idle hands. I remember about 2 or so weeks ago, I was in a very similar situation. I was really upset because I didn't spend nearly as much time as I did today being unproductive, but I spent enough time to where all the activities I had planned out for the rest of the day, I essentially ruined all of them. Because of that, wasted a lot of resources in the process. And that was really kind of like a tipping point for me, because I'm like, all right, bro, this is getting ridiculous. You gotta chill with all of this. And, for the next couple of days from there, things did get a lot better, but they've since degenerated back into that same state. I did also blue ball myself for the first time during this challenge this week. It was pretty bad. I've done it a couple of times in the past through, some of those exercises I've mentioned previously. That's kind of just a result of, perpetual edging. But yeah, I did get blue balled, and it was very painful throughout the day. I had a lot of things to do that day, a lot of walking around, and it was, I don't want to use the word excruciating, but it was very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. So much so that I actually mentioned it to one of my siblings, just so I could get some sense of, I don't know, empathy or something. Maybe that would help. He just seemed really confused. All that for what?
It's frustrating being a slave to your sexuality. I don't want to be like one of these, incels that you'd find on darker corners of the internet talking about, "Ooh, I wish I could just cut this sexuality off. It's like this useless abscess on my body that I can't get rid of. Blah, blah, blah." Did I say abscess or cyst? I think I meant cyst. I don't know. I'm not going to bring the conversation there, but it is frustrating. A lot of time is wasted and not much is gained. At least, when you're not in an, active relationship or something, which I, at the time, not really looking for any relationship like that. It's bad when you close your eyes and all you can see are after images of the material that you've been browsing. Not even just that, but a mix of the material and your own imagination. Maybe previously I'd say that's a good thing because, when I'm going to sleep, that might make the process of lucid dreaming a little bit easier. I don't think it does, but, it's already on the mind, how hard could it be? Now I think I'm a little bit more jaded. Yeah, I just want it to be over. But at the same time, I wish that I didn't care. You might be thinking, bro, it's like 2 days. How hard could it be? And you're right, it is like 2 days. That really shouldn't be a lot, but when you're in these final stages here, that might as well be like 2 more years. That sounds really fucking pathetic, man. That sounds really pathetic, I know. But unfortunately, it's the truth. For me, at least. But, it's never too late to turn it around. Now that I have recorded this, I will go on to at least try and get some work done. I'm trying to manage my sleep schedule as well, especially for tomorrow, since I'll pretty much be busy doing one thing at one place all day tomorrow. It's a really big event, which I guess should help, because, when you're being active, those urges are essentially non-existent for the most part. It definitely helps when women aren't around. But, it's more manageable. And technically Sunday's the first, but for my own reasons, I try to avoid such activities on Sundays. But yeah, I'll try and at least get some work done in a timely manner and try and get to sleep. Hopefully not by the time the sun's out. And we'll just go on from there. I guess this is the final update of the challenge, but I'll do one more afterwards, just in conclusion. Alright then, that's that. Okay. Alright, so at the time of recording, it is about 5 p.m. and the 21st of December. This is gonna be the, December 1st update and conclusion
of the No Nut November challenge for me. These little retrospectives of reviews I've been doing. As I said before, I was in a pretty bad place. Things weren't looking good. It was looking like I was about to fail in the last couple of days there. I didn't. I passed the challenge. I succeeded, I guess, if that's what you were looking for. But yeah, I did in fact succeed. I do distinctly remember going to like some Dollar General, going out of my way to purchase tissues, specifically the ones with like lotion in them, you know what I mean, for obvious reasons. And yeah, on that night, I got it over with. You would think after like a month, it's like, oh, okay, here's my prize. Like, what do I win? You think something would be special about it, but I mean, no, not particularly. There was definitely a lot more cleanup than usual, but other than that, it's just like riding a bike. You just ride at home. Not much has changed after a month, besides the quantity. Yeah, I didn't even really do it that more frequently than I usually do it. You know what I mean? I just fell right back into the routine. It didn't really change, after 1 month. The same as after like a week, after a day. It was the same type of thing. Like, even after a couple of days, I'd find myself like missing out on nights because I just had something better to do, or I just didn't get around to it. Nothing had really changed. I will say I did decide that I would use this opportunity, especially since we're just getting into a new year here, a new decade. I'd use that opportunity to kind of just go through the archives, if you will. All of this material I had gathered throughout the years, like kind of literally throughout the decade. Some of the earlier material I have are holdovers, transferred from other devices. And I don't even think I've transferred all of them from previous devices. Some of this material dates back probably as far back as like 2012, maybe even earlier. So yeah, it really is just kind of like a retrospective to see, all that you've accomplished in that time as far as this particular act goes. And it really is fascinating going through, your log here. And you can see all the stuff that you like used to be into. A lot of this stuff, like half of that folder, to be fair, it's not as big as some people's, because I've heard outrageous numbers. Mine's only like maybe a couple dozen gigabytes, which I mean, to some people that may be a lot, but trust me, it's not. Like, I could easily purge like half of that folder just because of what my tastes are today compared to what they were years ago. I look at some of this stuff, I'm like, really? This? Like, I'm almost disgusted by it. It's nothing degenerate or anything like that. At least not in my opinion. But it's just, a lot of it's just kind of like placid. Completely inoffensive. You know what I mean? I mean, I've always had like kind of like a prepubescent taste when it comes to some of this. But wow, like, I've surprised myself, back in the day. The current me is surprised by previous generations of me. But yeah, I decided that was the route I was going to take. And just by nature, the way that I'm going through it and the amount of content that needs to be gone through, it's taking a while to get through all of it all. Like, I would say I'm not even 10% done with all of it. And there's a different folder. I have it subsected into folders and all that type of stuff. So basically a lot of older stuff, then a lot of newer stuff. And I haven't even gotten to the second folder yet, so. But yeah, no. I decided to put that stopgap there, at least into the new decade, where I'm just gonna go through all of this material before I go through any of the normal sites, communities, forums, social medias that I usually browse. And I'm glad I'm doing it that way, actually, because it really puts kind of like this buffer, especially if you're browsing a lot of these same places frequently on a regular basis. You kind of get like, you often come up dry for a lot of content, especially if what you're looking for is something really specific, maybe certain subreddits, maybe certain Twitter accounts, maybe certain, if you're into like comics or something like that, waiting for a new issue to come out. You know, a lot of that type of stuff, that type of material takes a while to be made, obviously, so it takes a while to be able to consume that content. There's a lot of waiting. So I'm glad I'm doing it that way, just because it gives a bigger buffer than just 1 month. In fact, but it's looking, it's probably going to end up being 2-3 months. Until I'm able to come back, and then I'll just have a lot more content to go through. So, you know, a lot of it, because like I said, it's almost like I'm not like aroused by any of that older content, because I'm going from oldest to newest. So a lot of that stuff I may have been into years ago, a lot of it I'm low key just like clicking, tapping. You know what I mean? You think I'm playing like a MOBA or something. How fast I'm clicking through some of this stuff. Just because I'm not, it doesn't do it for me. So a lot of what gets me through a lot of that content, it's the eventual pursuit of some of this newer stuff that I'll be able to go through all this new content. And I'll have, in, you know, the longer and longer that I wait, the more and more content that there will be. So it's kind of like that excitement that kind of pushes me through a lot of that older content. In fact, when I'm done with it, I mean, I'm not going to delete it. At least I have no plans to. It's because I'm big into archival in general. But like I could, you know, just by the way it's looking, I could easily just delete all of that type of stuff and start anew. All right, boys, this is round 2 for this decade. Let's see how we do. You know what I mean? I might just do it that way. I just might make a completely new folder. Just add on to that. We'll see. I don't know. As far as the deeper psychological, social implications of it go, I had mentioned before that at one point in my life, through going through these intermittent fapping exercises, it was one of the worst places I've ever been in. It sounds pathetic because it is, but you know, I just didn't want to go back to being that person, because it does change you on a chemical level. Some may think that's a good thing. For me, in my situation, the things that I want to pursue, it very much isn't. I didn't like the person that it made me. Not at all. Throughout the actual No Nut November challenge, I didn't feel a lot of that. In fact, I didn't feel it at all. I did manage to keep myself busy in other ways, not as much as I may have liked. But I would go out a lot, you know, just to fulfill some of the routines and the prior commitments I've had. And like I had said before in a previous update, wow, there's 1 week left. No, it kind of just went by like it was nothing. All that turmoil, all that frustration, just for it to go by like that was it. That's what all of this training was for. That's what all these exercises. I guess the crux of the story is, you know, especially for, you know, us guys out there, this is a big part of, you know, just our lives, our routines, especially if you're single, even if you're not. But it's not like as big as we might make it out to be, at least me. Let me speak for myself here. I was talking to a friend recently. He's about to go on vacation to another country, and I forget how it came up, but he was just kind of mentioning, he's talking about, you know, like smoking or something like that, since that's something he's really big into. And he was like, oh, I don't know how I'm gonna like last through all of it. Some version of that came up. And I'm like, well, you know, when you're on vacation, you ever notice like when you're on vacation, you know, it's like not an issue, you know? You could be on vacation for weeks, months, and the urge never comes up really to commit such acts. And he's like, yeah, that is true when you're on vacation, just because you can busy yourself a lot easier. Yeah, you know, it's not really an issue. I just kind of found that thought intriguing. There's been a lot of sentiment as of late on certain corners of the internet, in certain communities, certain ideologies that we need to ban this type of content, especially for younger people outright in general, ideally. And before, all of these routines and, the challenge, I was very against that sentiment. I just found it kind of ridiculous, to be frank. I've had discussions and debates with people about that before. And, I know of the points and the arguments, but I just don't buy it. I don't agree with it. I don't think they're very strong arguments. And after all of this, especially with the conclusions that I've drawn, you may think that I may have changed my mind, but if anything, I've more hard and fast in those beliefs. Like this stuff, this content, it doesn't have to change you. It doesn't have to be that big of a force in your life if you don't let it. It's always going to be out there. Just look at movies, music videos, video games, look at anything. Look at Game of Thrones. That's not the issue. The issue is people being in points in their lives, going through certain routines where this menial aspect of their lives, this small part, kind of just takes over, festers. It's like in a vacuum. The air is stagnant, so it allows this bacteria to form in their lives. Anything in excess is not good. Poison isn't about specific material, it's about quantity. Anything can be poison with the right dosage. So I guess the takeaway of all this is just moderation. Am I going to continue these routines in the future? These exercises? I mean, I don't think so. I don't really think I got much out of it. But am I going to encourage myself to, if I don't feel like it, am I going to do it anyway just because that's the schedule, that's the routine? No, I don't think I will. It's not necessary. Forcing yourself to do it when you otherwise don't want to, that defeats the purpose. I mean, if you can't sleep or something, okay, maybe you can give it a shot. If you have no reason to do it and you don't feel like doing it, then why do it? Under that mindset, I found it a lot easier in the past and even in the present, where it's like, yeah, no, like you don't even notice it. Oh, wow, I've skipped a couple of nights. Wow, interesting. If you're a part of NoFap or No Wanks or any of those ideologies, this isn't like an indictment upon you people. If you found success in that ideology, in those routines, more power to you. But for me, I don't, and for others, and to anybody who, who's been thinking about these things, might feel a little cautious about these things. It's perfectly fine to, eat your cravings, to put it one way. It's perfectly fine. When you feel like it, go ahead. When you don't. It's as simple as that. And that's the mindset I'm gonna take forward. Will I participate in the No Nut November challenge again? Yeah, I think I will. I don't see why not. It's kind of like this internet tradition at this point. One aspect that I very much enjoyed about the whole experience is the communal aspect of it, actually. It's like a community of people, like, trying to help each other get through it. You meet somebody else, oh, you're doing the challenge, oh, and you'll talk about it. You talk about the struggles you may have had. It's fun. So yeah, I'll do it again, but I won't continue with intermittent fapping. If that's something that you feel like you could get something out of, go ahead and try it. See what works for you. But for me, nah, I don't think that's the move. I'm gonna try and make a lot of changes in my life going forward. It kind of lines up just because of when I was born, but I'm 20 now, and obviously 2020 is coming up in a couple of days here. So for this coming decade, I'm gonna try and make a lot of changes just in my life personally, and this is an aspect of my life and a lot of people's lives. In fact, I'd say pretty much everybody's, at least every man, every male being. And I'm going to take a different approach to that as well. If anybody's actually listening to this, I mean, firstly, I'm ever so slightly concerned. But, thanks for being with me, going through this journey with me, and Godspeed, I guess. Alright, that's it for me.